Hey y'all, it's Rocio Flores with the Can I Just Be podcast, and today's topic is called The Myth of Disconnection. If you hear a lot of sound in the background here, it's because I got the heater on. It's like 20 degrees where I'm at, and it's cold. So I can't turn it off because I'm freezing. I'm actually sitting in my bedroom because it's just that cold. I can't be in my office. And so, yeah, hopefully it doesn't sound horrible. Also, I don't know how to sound excited when I'm doing these, and it's not because I'm not excited. It's because I just don't talk like that naturally. I don't naturally go oh my god, hey guys, I know some people are naturally super bubbly, but I'm sometimes I'm real bubbly, and sometimes you can't get me to shut up, but more often than not I sound kind of and I think that's more realistic. I also think podcasts are probably a more realistic place versus videos. People want really animated people. Podcasts, you can be a little chill. So especially with this topic today, I kind of want to be a little bit more myself. So I haven't done one of these in a little bit. It's been a little bit, sorry about that. I keep trying to set up some sort of schedule of, okay, let me commit to doing one a week or one a month or one every so often. And because making the podcast isn't hard, at least, I ain't putting that much work into it compared to other things. I know there are people who do put way more work into them, but I care more about what I'm saying, I guess, or what I'm trying to get across, or what I'm trying to talk about. And it's not so much that I can't get a topic out. It's more I thought of this concept that I want to talk about today 2 months ago, and I've been thinking about it for 2 months. I've been talking about it. I've been working through it in my head for so long that I couldn't just sit down and talk about it and feel confident that I was saying what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it, and that I wasn't being rash about what I was saying. And so then that's not very consistent, at least not the way that people want you to be. So sorry about that. Part of me feels okay because I know that there's 3 people that listen to this, and for those of you that do listen to it, I'm very, very grateful. And I hope that you could maybe let me know that you're listening to it, and that way I know exactly who I'm committing to. I think it would be very different. I know people who have incredibly high amounts of listeners. Obviously, if you say, hey, I'm doing a podcast on Tuesday, and a bunch of people tune in and you didn't do it, then that's very inconsistent. While me, I'm just putting them out there randomly, and I don't want to commit to anything that I know I won't be able to. So much of me being able to be stable in my life requires that I don't commit to anything that I know I can't commit to, because then I'm going to be freaking out because I committed to too many things. And that's just part of how I have to do things in order to stay stable and healthy. And, I don't know if you listen to any of my other stuff, or, have been following me in any of my other social media, then I'm not somebody who's uber healthy. I feel this space of self-help and personal development and all of these things, it's usually taken up by these people who are perfect, people who are in suits and present themselves as the pinnacle of humanity, right? They figured out how to do things perfectly. They wake up at 4 a.m. and they work out and drink juice, or they don't breathe air, right? They are perfect. And then they're teaching us how to be that way. And that's not my brand of self-help. Because it's not realistic at all. At least not for the vast majority of people. And it hasn't been realistic for me. And for me, it's been a lot more of a frustrating journey. And that's kind of more realistic viewpoint that I want to show the world. Because I think that you still can do all of these really good, healthy things for yourself. And you can put into practice a lot of things that are genuinely helpful, but you need to know what's realistic about them, right? Yes, waking up early is one way of getting more time in your day, of being able to access more energy in your day, of being able to do certain things in your day. But it doesn't work for everyone, and it would be irresponsible of me to act like it does, just because that's what I can do, etc. So, within that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that's kind of the framework that I want to get at in some of these podcasts. While on my YouTube channel, my blogs post, the framework that I go about is okay, let's take a question or a concept or an idea, whatever a person's questioning, like, should I do this or how do I do this? And rather than me telling you how to do it, I just go around maybe giving you the framework of how you can make the decision. So, okay, these are your options. This is what you should be thinking of. This is what you may not consider. Because I don't think enough people tell you how to make the decision. Too many people are just telling you what to do. So in these podcasts, rather than even get into like what options you have, I just want to talk about the issue. And because that way we're talking about the realities around those issues, why some people are never even going to get to that question because they're still stuck on the thought. Like, that's miles away from getting to the point where they even think that they want to make a decision about a certain issue. And so before we can get to the place where you can get to that pinnacle perfect person telling you what is and isn't right in the world, you have to get close. So that's kind of the framework that I think I want to stick to in these podcasts. And I think the last few episodes I've made have really I've been trying to kind of explain who I am or kind of what my story is, maybe so you guys get an understanding of where I'm coming from, or sort of just like a little bit of a background so you understand, like, when I say something, why I'm saying it, or maybe what prompted me to come at it from that perspective versus somebody else. But from this point on, I don't want to go just into my own world or situations, and just kind of, more than anything, I'm just going to share my thought process around certain issues as they relate to everyone else as well, without me telling you to do or not do or choose or not choose anything. Does that make sense? I hope so. Let me know. All right, so I titled this The Myth of Disconnection. And so the posts that I've done throughout this week and this month are about the idea of taking a break, specifically, or at least using the example of taking a break from social media, because I've kind of been not feeling so like motivated. I haven't been feeling like I want to be constantly online. And I think that's something that a lot of people are feeling. I mean, it is 2020. And this is just an annoying time to be online. I think it's been increasingly a more and more annoying time to be online, or to even be a part of humanity right now. And I think a lot of people are feeling that need to like disconnect. And there's obviously very positive sides to it. There's very negative sides to it. In my latest blog post, I went and talked about how you can make that decision and some things to consider. And then I'm going to write a Medium post that's a little bit more edgy, maybe a little bit more rude, and takes a little bit more of a stance on maybe why, like, I'm going to be straight up and be like, I think most of us are really toxic people, and we make Facebook a really shitty place. But in this podcast, I want to talk more about the idea of disconnecting, because I've just noticed some patterns. So I want to talk about I'm going to give you guys an example of a couple of people that I've noticed and the way they approach the concept of taking a break. And then I want to talk about maybe some trends that I've noticed online as far as like how some people take breaks and what it actually means. And then just in general, maybe talk about, I got a few things in here, okay? Talking about depression and burnout and accountability and freedom, and I got a lot of little things in here. So hopefully you stick around and want to listen to this entire podcast, because I think it's going to be really long. I do have like about 2 months to make up for. So yeah, let's begin. First and foremost, again, it's 2020 and it is not new for anybody to post online, I'm taking a break, or for us to recognize that there's like people that we just haven't seen online. I've seen several of my own friends online just pop up again, suddenly be like, hey, I haven't been on. I've been dealing with this, or I've been dealing with that. And then I've seen people who very clearly take a stance like, hey, I'm gonna log off for a certain amount of time, etc. For a lot of these people, it kind of sets a precedent for like people to know, hey, I may not answer your messages, or I may not do this, or I may not be checking this, etc. For others, I don't know. Some people obviously are, sometimes there's definitely the people who are like taking a break from Facebook every week. And, there's memes about it. There's conversations about it. Obviously, there's people who make fun of that. There's people always who make fun of everything online, right? I know that I have several people on my own newsfeed who are posting that often. And I think sometimes, so let me just start by saying that I think that we all approach social media so differently that we're all so unwilling to understand how other people approach social media. So you gotta understand, for some people, social media is like the thing that they do. It's the thing that they like to be. It's how they escape their world. It's how they take a break from their world. So you see some people who are like literally posting 100 times a day. That's their thing. That's what they do. That's how they communicate with their friends. That's how they engage with the world. That's how they get a break from the monotony of life. You know, that's just, so for them to say, I'm just done with Facebook. I'm so tired. I want to take a break and then be back on in 3 days is a break. Like they literally took 3 days off and it was probably killing them the entire time. I know. I've been that kind of person. I've, in my own relationships, been the person on my phone a lot. I can't say that I'm on there as often as I used to be. Like this was more when I was younger. And I was definitely not when I was using Facebook for any important reason. I think the moment I started using Facebook for like, I have to post on a dedicated schedule, I have to engage with people because that's part of my business, I just got tired of it. And so now I'm a lot more willing to like, I just put my phone down and if it rings, it rings. I don't care. And that's something like that's a boundary I had to force myself to do, and a habit I had to force myself to create because it was hard. Like being on your phone all the time and having that be like something that you're like, it's like an addiction, right? It is like a lot of people say that, or it's just a habit. It's just a really strongly connected, emotionally connected experience. So again, it's very easy to judge people. On the other end, there's people who never check their social media, who never really log on, and so to them, all of the conversation around social media is just ridiculous because they don't understand it at all. Then again, they may be the people who disconnect in other ways from reality, right? I've always found it interesting how a person may be like, well, I'm never on social media, or they like maybe come at it from a moral high ground of like trying to say like there's a positive end, or like I guess they're trying to come off as being better than others because they're not spending all their time on social media. But then they'll admit to spending all their time doing other things that are just as fruitless, quote unquote fruitless, right? And maybe we are just kind of hypocritical in the fact that we don't value certain things as much as other things. So then we judge people who are on their phone, but we don't judge people who are in front of the TV all day, or who play video games all day, or who, get high all day, or people who work too much, people who never work at all, people who disconnect. And it's just, the reality is we all find ways to disconnect from engaging, from connecting, and from relating with others. And it's a human thing to do, right? I think we can all recognize that everybody has a need to do that. And it's very, it's unrealistic to try and say that it doesn't happen, or that you're somehow somebody who that doesn't affect, or who doesn't do that. We all have the need to disconnect, whether it's in a positive or negative sense, or whether it's from a positive or negative experience. We all need, we all think about getting away, going on vacation, going on a trip, being on our own, taking time for ourselves. And that can be a very positive thing, even if you're taking a break from very positive experiences. I mean, we tend to think about needing a break from negative experiences, right? Like working too much, or dealing with stress, or, doing things that aren't healthy for us. But we also sometimes need a break from things that are healthy for us, but that we are just needing a disconnection from. Sometimes when we disconnect, it gives us a better view of the world. It helps us have more gratitude for the things that are good for us in our life. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. So why did I call this the myth? I think because we have a lot of ideas around this topic that I think are hurting us instead of helping us in the long run. And so I'll just start. I wanted to go over like 2 popular examples that I thought were really cool. before I begin, I want to make sure that I make it clear that I'm not criticizing either of these people. I think they're awesome and I love them and I follow them and they're like my favorite people on YouTube. I just thought it was really interesting how they both sort of decided to take breaks and disconnect, I guess in a sense, from what they were doing online, so YouTube and social media and stuff like that, around the same time, or at least obviously within this year, and they approached it very differently. And I think, one, I want to say that, well, I love both of them very much. They're really awesome and they're my favorite people online. So I'm not throwing shade in any way, shape, or form. But I think they showed examples of what it means to disconnect and how people usually go about making the decisions to take that break, you know? So first person is Simply Neological, Christine, and the second person is Sophia Nygaard. So I don't know if you follow them. They're really big YouTubers, like really, really big YouTubers. So you might or might not follow them. They're kind of in the beauty space, like girly kind of stuff. I highly recommend both of them. I find all of their videos very entertaining, and I really like how they're both uniquely themselves as people. So it's not like I'm watching a tutorial video with somebody who's like not a personality. I'm also not feeling like I'm watching a video with somebody who's incredibly fake. Like I said, I can't handle all the excitingness. You know, everybody who gets on like a video and it's like, oh my god, and like they're super hyper, I get tired. So when I see people who are just kind of themselves but are funny and intelligent and cool, you know, like I like that. Anyways, Simply Neological was somebody who was making videos like twice a week for years. Very, very famous, has her own nail company now and still works like a full-time job. And she made a decision, and she was very open about that decision, to stop posting consistently. On the other hand, Sophia she has been, I guess if you go to her page, you see that it says on there that she posts every so often. I've only been following her for the last couple of years, so as long as I've followed her, I haven't ever noticed a consistent posting schedule from her. And this last year, it was like suddenly she stopped posting anything, and I was like, oh man, I haven't seen any of her videos. And then I'm like, I'm starting to get worried. Like, you know, you start caring about these people that you don't know. And I'm like, I don't see anything. And I like went to her Twitter and I went to like her other social media trying to see if I saw anything, and there was like nothing. But she's somebody who doesn't post often in general. She doesn't have like a very consistent schedule. So part of me was like, I'm sure everything's fine. I'm thinking, look, if there was something wrong, we would hear about it, right? I'm like, unless something incredibly horrible happened, it would seem, I guess, it would be weird to not hear back from her at all, right? For her to just suddenly go offline. But she was kind of offline for like, I would say maybe like a month or two or something. Enough that I wasn't the only one thinking it, and all her other like fans, and I would say probably much bigger fans, people who like went out of their way to like message them and email them and like send them stuff and ask them like, hey, what's going on? And obviously a lot of people had ideas of like, oh my god, is something going on? Like thinking like the worst, or thinking like maybe something really big in their life. They did just get married, maybe they had a baby, or they're pregnant, or you know, stuff like that. And so I just thought it was interesting when she came back how she approached having taken that break. She was very clear when she came back. She was open about the fact that she was gone. She wrote a little note basically telling us like, if you're interested in reading it, you can read it. And she talked about how much of a strain or how much stress it has been put on her, how much she's taken on herself throughout the last few years since her channel took off, and how she's felt like she's never been able to catch up. And she talked about the toll that a lot of where the stressors kind of came. So I don't want to go too much into detail about what she said. I think if you follow her, that's information that you want to know about her. You can go look it up. But everything she said made a lot of sense as far as like why she's been struggling to be consistent, and why she struggled to get to a point where she can just taking the breaks that she needs to take at the points that she needs to take them, right? So obviously she just, in order to get on track, she needed to take this time off, to not be off, but to just catch up. So she made it clear that she's been working this whole time, that they've been working on getting caught up, but that they've just been that behind. And so to me, it just made a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah, when I notice that when I am very behind on stuff, it's just easier. A lot of times it's easier not to explain it and to just get it done. And then when you're like at the end point, be like, okay, now let me explain what happened, right? But she made it also kind of clear that this isn't an issue that's 100% resolved yet. Like, all they did during this time that they had to be off was get at least caught up enough to post that next video and to explain what's happening, but that they don't have that clear, concise like plan on how to prevent it moving forward, and that's what they're working on. So then that's kind of where the whole myth of disconnection idea came into my head. I wanted to kind of use these examples as a way to differentiate how we make those decisions about taking breaks, because for many of us, I think that we do get caught up. We're just, and I'm not talking about just social media, but social media I think is a good example, but I think in life, right? So many of us just get to the point where we end up burnt out, and then at that point there really isn't an option about whether or not we want to disconnect. Our bodies do it for us, right? Physically, our bodies will do it for us. Mentally, our bodies will do it for us. Like, we would just get to a point where we can't handle anymore, and our body's like, you have to sleep, or you have to eat, or you have to, just break down. And some people are much better at kind of recognizing those clues, recognizing when they're just no longer feeling well, when they're no longer enjoying what they're doing, or when they're no longer feeling like they can handle the weight of what's happening, and they need to slow down. That's kind of what Christine did. She talked about how she wasn't feeling it anymore. She wasn't feeling the same way as she had felt about other videos, and how a lot of the times, she didn't like sitting in her office having to like record this video for hours by herself, and how she didn't like having to do certain things. And obviously, if you get into the point where you don't like something, you that's a really good indicator that like, hey, maybe you need to take a break. But for many of us, that's not like, while she's a really good example of somebody who set a really clear boundary and decided that's how she's going to move forward, and then she communicated it very well so that now she's able to kind of do things as she's able to. Obviously, there's a lot of privilege in her position. She's a person who has a full-time government job, so she's got that healthy backup where her career isn't dependent solely on her status on YouTube, and she's got like millions of views on YouTube, so obviously she's making good money. So not everybody has that privilege of saying like, I want to take a break. If you have a regular job, if you have regular responsibilities, if you're a mom, if you normal, I guess I don't want to say the word normal, but I would say common or the vast majority of humanity doesn't have the privilege of deciding not to do something just because they aren't enjoying it, I guess. And she's never made it seem like she doesn't understand, of course. So from here on, forget them. It's me talking. But I think that there are ways for us to recognize, like, hey, things are starting to go in a way I don't want them to go, and I need to stop, or I need to change something. Something needs to be addressed. Or else we're on the opposite end where things are forced on us, where suddenly we can't focus on anything. Your lights get shut off because you forgot to pay something. You forget to pick up your kids. You forget to eat. You pass out. Your car breaks down because you forgot to do it. Actually, to be quite fair right now, in the last few months, I started making those little mistakes. Like, I just forgot to go send our payment for our rent, so we got a late fee. And it was like a moment of so much, like, really frustrated, because it was like everybody forgot, but I took it on very personally to, like, it felt like a very personal failure to forget such a simple thing, and then for it to cost me $20. It was like a little insult, and I hated it. Like, it was just an ugly feeling to be like constantly behind. And I could tell when I start getting like, when I'm just start struggling, because I mean, obviously online I probably don't look like somebody who does a lot, but as somebody who has, I guess, struggled with mental health for so long, it's the little consistency and my little routines and the little things that help me kind of stay stable, that help me, continue, I guess, living. Like I'm getting up every day because I'm doing these tiny little things that help me wake up in the morning. And it's when I start kind of like losing control of the little things because I'm taking on too much, or I just can't handle certain things. I just start not being able to handle things. So I forget to eat, or I forget to drink water. Next thing you know, I have a headache, and I don't know why I have a headache. So then I take something so I'm able to sleep through the headache, and then I can't wake up in the morning. And the next thing you know, I'm late on this and I'm late on that, and I forgot this and I posted this wrong and I wrote this wrong, and I am getting irritated and frustrated and annoyed, and I'm struggling. Suddenly I'm struggling and I don't see a way out of it. And in the past, I would have pushed through that as much as I could until I couldn't. One of my first jobs, I remember they gave us the opportunity. So we had like a point system to miss work. And towards the end of that job, I was missing work often. I was back when I was really depressed. And I would just stay in bed all day. It wasn't even a matter of taking a break. I didn't take the day off and like watch TV, right? I wasn't taking the day off and reading or going for a walk or doing things I liked. I could not function. I was out of it. I was in bed the entire day and I couldn't exit myself. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the feeling. And ever since then, it's been my goal not to let that happen. You know what I mean? So over the last few years, sometimes I see myself doing less and less and still feeling that level of like anxiety rising up in me. And I have to make changes. And I recognize in myself when I make changes that work and changes that don't work. And so I guess I keep saying that's where I get the whole myth. Look, sometimes we disconnect because we're telling ourselves that this is what works for us, or this is what's going to help us get better or do better or act better or change something. When in reality, we're not disconnecting. We're isolating. We're avoiding. We're rejecting. We're doing all of the things that are going to make the pattern that we're stuck in stronger and stronger and stronger. So I wrote down in my little sticky note, if you can hear it here, the words breaks versus breakdowns. I can say that back in, I don't know, that was back like 2014. Dang, like 6 years ago. I was having breakdowns pretty often. I wasn't functioning. I wasn't doing anywhere near, like I wasn't functioning anywhere near as well as I'm doing now. I would say that like I was doing a lot, but doing everything like last minute. I was just reacting constantly. That's all I can explain to us. Like it wasn't, I never had a plan. I just needed to do what I needed to do. I was in school and I was working, and I had just gotten married. So running a household was like, I didn't know what I was doing, which is fair. I think when you're at that age, I was pretty young. I was like 20, I think. 20 something. I don't know. And it's fair for us to struggle, especially in the beginning of our lives when we don't come from a background. Again, this is where privilege kind of, the idea of like everyone's different and everybody's in a different position, right? Some people were raised in a way where they saw what healthy habits look like and healthy self-regulation and healthy patterns and how to handle difficulties of life. And when you've been raised with those kind of habits, even if you enter a very difficult situation or a brand new situation, those habits are ingrained in you in a way that now you're able to make them fit into that new situation. If you're somebody who comes from a different kind of upbringing, whether it's because of poverty or social class, other, violence, things like that, well, it's not as easy to then, because this is how I felt. I put myself in a very healthy situation. I was married, I had my own place, I had a good job, I was in school, and I could not handle anything. I did not know how to handle anything. It was like, nothing had changed, even though I had tried to change everything. I hadn't, and I didn't have the tools. So I hadn't learned how to manage myself, my emotions, my thoughts, my behavior, and the world around me. So I would just break down. I used to have panic attacks daily. I used to stay in bed all day. I started, honestly, I just finished school because I needed to finish school. And then I was like, I don't want anything. I don't want to think ever again. And I remember as soon as I finished school, I quit my job. And I just wanted time off. And I remember feeling incredibly frustrated during that time off, because then at that time, a lot of other things, and I mean, we can go into detail about this later on, but I didn't get the time off I thought I wanted. And I didn't work on the things that I thought I needed to work on. So then it was, in a sense, in my head, wasted time. And I think that's what happens for a lot of us. We say, I'm feeling so frustrated because of my freaking Facebook, or Facebook is too negative. I'm starting to feel really negative. And then we log off and we don't change anything. We don't address anything. We don't, it's like we're still on Facebook. We're just not looking at the phone, right? So then we didn't actually disconnect. There's a continuation of thoughts that continues, right? That occurs where maybe we didn't post that status, but it's still in our heads. We're still thinking about how to say it. We're still thinking about how we could have really put it in on them. Like, I should have said this and I should have said that and I could have said it like this. I should have worded this way. I should have shared that post. I should have responded to that post. Or we get stuck in our head where we're still thinking about Facebook. We're still thinking about what that person said or what that person did, or that news or that thing or that information or that idea. We're still going. We haven't stopped. Our thoughts are continuing. We didn't disconnect. So then what happens is, it's been 3 days. We've been seething this whole time. And you finally sit down for dinner and you realize, oh man, I haven't thought about this for an hour. Maybe you don't tell yourself that, but you're finally get that slight beginning of that feeling of okay, I took a break, and then we decide that's okay. So we're good. Let me get back on. And that's us, rather than us disconnecting from Facebook, right? So the idea is we're in this toxic environment, or we're in this negative stressor, or whatever you want to call it, right? We're in the bad place. And so, quote unquote, we are wanting to disconnect from that bad place to get to a good place. What we don't recognize is that we're not, by logging off and continuing that stream of thoughts and that same amount of, basically, we're not taking a break. The moment we start to feel that we're entering that good place, we're entering that area of maybe we're starting to actually get a break. When we say we're disconnecting, we're actually disconnecting from that, because it's uncomfortable sometimes. Or we feel like we've got enough of it, or we're good, we're fixed, right? We did good. I did my part. I disconnected for a week. I blah, 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 blah. I took a day off. I went for dinner by myself, or I went and got a massage, or I got a pedicure, or whatever you want to say that you did to treat yourself, to get away, to do for yourself, whatever you thought that it was, that thing that you were doing to get away from the bad place. What you are actually doing is continuing the bad place and running away from the good stuff. Because sometimes the discomfort of actually sitting without the bad stuff, it's just uncomfortable. It just sucks, right? The moment you realize, wow, I haven't been thinking about Facebook, or wow, I haven't been thinking about my stressful family. Wow, I haven't been thinking about work. Wow, I'm actually resting. Suddenly you're oh, I gotta escape this. This isn't good. This doesn't actually feel as good as nope, I can't do this. This is wrong. We get these ideas that taking breaks are bad, right? Taking a nap is bad. Or, it's just a lot of conditioning from society, a lot of societal ideas that creep into our mind telling us you're being lazy, or you're being irresponsible, you're being selfish, you should feel guilty right now for not doing that work. How dare you let somebody else take out the trash? How dare you not be putting in that extra few hours of work? Don't you care about your son going to college? Our brains do what they know how to do. I mean, it's easy to like blame our brains and be like, well, I just have bad thoughts. But honestly, it's just a pattern. Our brains do what they know to do, and so they do it. And in that moment where we could genuinely make a decision to disconnect from that pattern, that's usually when we come back and we just reinforce that pattern even stronger. And that's really where I think it's the myth of disconnection. I want to go into the more sinister side of this because before I can go into like recognizing maybe the healthier ends or how to work past them or how we can tackle this in a different way, I want to talk about some of the parts that annoy me more and why I think that this pattern that we keep feeding into can have really negative repercussions. So I'm going to bring up a few examples of when we use this pattern in a very negative way. I want to make sure that I make it clear. I'm not talking about anybody specifically. It's 2020, and I think we're all doing this in one way or another. We're all disconnecting when we just can't take it. I think that if there was ever a time for us to all just let each other, like, just let people be, right? Like, we don't need to guilt anybody into anything. We don't need to, like, this is the year to be okay with the fact that people are not okay. But that's not the same as not holding people accountable to doing what's right when they have the power to do what's right. And so then, okay. All right, let me get into it. How many people have you seen who disconnected or took, let me do the quote thing again, quote unquote, took a break right after the Blackout Tuesday? How many people suddenly decided that Facebook was just too toxic the moment that their friends started posting about Black Lives Matter? You guys noticed it. I'm sure you saw it. A lot of the times, what we see as taking a break from toxicity, right, is us running away from our responsibility to engage with difficult things. And when it makes us uncomfortable, suddenly it's about our comfort. And we let go of any responsibility that we have to work on things that affect others. On that same kind of like pattern, I would say sometimes relationships are difficult, and sometimes there's negative patterns in relationships. And it's something that is very common is for us to run away from that, right? When things get hard, we break up with our boyfriend, we ghost our friends, we, there's a lot of things. So we stop calling people, we stop hanging out, we isolate, and we create this pattern of isolation where things are difficult right now. It feels really bad, or I feel like I need to say this to my friend, but I don't want to, or my boyfriend treated me badly, and I don't know how to, tell him that I don't like this, or somebody genuinely hurts you. And so rather than work through that or find a way to resolve it in a way that is more permanent, we just run away for a moment. So we technically disconnect for a moment. People take breaks from relationships, or you ghost someone for a few months and you just don't feel like talking to them, or you just avoid them as much as possible, or you isolate and just disconnect. Honestly, that's what we do. We disconnect. And so then we don't tackle the issue, and it's very different from, because, I know that right off the bat, some people might be thinking, well, what about people who have to disconnect, who have to disengage from people who are harmful? That's not the same as avoiding or isolation, right? And that's the thing. There's a very big difference, right? So there's a very big difference from somebody who says, I'm logging off of Facebook because I recognize that all of these things I'm seeing are negative, and they make me think negative things, and they're making me recognize negative patterns in myself. And rather than try and prove myself online, rather than try to engage myself with this world that I don't understand, that I'm not feeling comfortable in, that I don't know better for, right? I'm going to take time off and I'm going to learn about it, and I'm going to do some soul searching, and I'm going to step back and try to recognize that maybe I'm not right. Maybe it's not my opinion that matters, and maybe I just need to learn how to do better. And I shouldn't be online until I'm willing to do better. And another example would be like in a relationship, recognizing I don't think that I am my healthiest around this person, or that this person treats me in a way that is healthy, and I'm going to make a decision to take a definitive break and say, this is no longer somebody I want to engage with ever again. That's very different than somebody who just can't deal, so then they break, they say, I'm taking a break. But then they come back and the pattern continues. And that's not to say, that's not a moral judgment on anybody. So that's not like saying like, oh, you bad person for doing that. We all do it. Everybody does it to some extent, in small ways, big ways. Some people are definitely like toxic, and I would definitely like say that they are. Obviously, we all know people who we might have very real moral judgments against, right? We might be like, that person sucks. But that's not to say that we don't suck. Like, everybody sucks. We all do bad things. We all do things that are unhealthy and that are not the best way of approaching things, and we all perpetuate negative patterns. I just think that this trend, or I guess it's a trend. I wanna call it something fancier, but it's a trend. The trend of disconnecting, the trend of taking a break, can exacerbate those negative patterns. Because if we don't know better, we just see something and we think, we get the idea. We see our friends talking about how they just need some time off. And they're like, well, maybe I should take time off. Or we see that other people disconnect, so why don't I disconnect? Or you see other people breaking up, so you break up. Or you do things that you see other people doing without actually having put in the work or the time to understand if this was the right choice for you, or if it was a healthy thing to do, or if it's going to help you in any way. Let me ask you, if you had never watched a movie about vacationing, if nobody ever talked about vacations, if you never knew that people just got up and got on a boat and went around the world, if your parents never talked about one day going on a vacation, if you just lived life, would you ever think of anything in your life as a vacation? Like, would your trip to the mountains during the weekend be a getaway, or would it just be you going to the mountains? Would your lunch break be like a time to finally take some time off? Or would you just be like, oh, that's just part of my day. Eating is a healthy part of my day. Would you wanting actually like having this genuine, like, I want to go to this museum in this city, or I really want to go visit this restaurant. I don't know. What do people do on vacation? I don't go on vacation enough. Like, I go on boring vacations. But like, let's say you genuinely, like, that's your want. Your want is to go sit on the beach because you just want to do that. Why does it have to be some sort of like thing that can only happen if you're escaping your life? Why isn't it something that we make a part of our lives because we want it to be a part of our lives? Not because our lives suck and we need a break once a year to not suck. But because we care about making our life great all the time. That's just another part of making our life great all the time. When things are difficult, what if we just saw things as things that needed to be resolved because they are difficult and we go through stress, and there's no such thing as not going through stress? Like, what if nobody ever told you that there's a way to live a life that doesn't have stress? Like, if people just talked about stress as like, okay, maybe this is a good example. If you just dropped a spoon, what do? You pick it up. You either wash it and use it again. You either, whisper something about 5-second rules and don't tell anybody, and just tell yourself you're fine and start using it. Or you grab a new one and you move on with the day. That was a problem. That was a stressor. That was a difficulty. That was an issue in your day. But we don't see that as like the world ending, right? We just think of the objective, which is I need to eat. I need to do the next thing that I do want to do. We don't tend to see conflict or difficulties or problems that way. We tend to see them as like the world ending, or we have to hold on to our pride. Like, how how dumb am I for dropping this? And that's actually, I would say, one of those really strong indicators that things are getting really bad in your life, when you start to freak out over little things. It's how you can recognize very negative patterns: depression, burnout, abuse. When you're in an abusive situation, dropping something, breaking something accidentally, tripping. I mean, just doing really what should just be an oops becomes a really, really big deal. And it's treated like a very big deal. And when you start to recognize that everything's such a big deal, you just want to break. Like, you just want to get away. You just want to disconnect from yourself. Which then leads to, let's be honest, drinking, drug use, partying, gambling, shopping, overeating. Basically anything that we view as negative in our life and in this humanity, in this world. Conflict, violence, obviously much worse things, or at least what many would consider worse things, like murder, crime. A lot of it is disconnection. A lot of it is people just seeking a way to just act different, for things to be different. They just want a different life. They just want things to get better. And it's because we glorify that. I mean, to be honest, we make it a thing that is a thing. We talk about it all the time. We engage with that all the time. We don't ever want to talk about solutions, because solutions sound very uncomfortable, and they're very much like a personal responsibility thing that we don't like. And we like to argue about who's responsible and argue about, well, they should be responsible, but I don't have to be responsible, right? Like, there's like, it's just bad conversation. Like, we just don't like it. So we continue the cycle of avoidance, and we make everything this giant conversation about not the actual thing. So we never address the actual thing, and we hate addressing the actual thing. So then we get in arguments with people on Facebook about who's responsible for what, and we get into arguments about who should take out the trash, and we either take on the role of taking on too much responsibility and being the person who tries to fix everything, or we become the avoidant person who doesn't do anything ever and who just pisses off other people. Guess which one I'm on? Yes, so there's a lot of negativity here. I think that when we are so focused on the idea of getting away, we almost lose our freedom of choice, our freedom to choose to have a different kind of effect on our own lives. We give up responsibility, and by giving up responsibility, we give up our accountability and our decision making. Like, we give up our ability to feel like we have any kind of will in this world. And we just keep feeding into this negative pattern. We all do it. I mean, we genuinely all do it. So I guess if we want to talk about what can we do about it, I think understanding that maybe every single time we have that feeling, we have to think about it just a little bit more. Maybe, like, don't use thinking as a way to avoid it, because I do that. I mean, it's very easy to get into a 2-month conversation in your head about something instead of just doing it. It's very easy to, like, tell yourself for years, like, I should switch jobs, or I should go back to school, or I should do this, or I should do that, because you're just using, now your thoughts become the thing that you're using to disconnect, and you stop engaging. Breaks, like a physical, most of what we consider a break is not a break. You're not taking a break from other things. You're just incorporating good things into your day, right? Taking a nap is not a break from your life. You're still living. You're still alive. Taking a vacation is not a break from your world. It's just you adding a new location, a new experience to your life. Choosing not to log onto your phone first thing in the morning, or to not look at it during, like not check your email during your lunch break, or not, certain things like that, like not get into that conversation on Facebook, or instead of getting into that conversation, making a decision that you're going to read something about it first, or you're going to look something up, or you're going to try and understand a certain situation or concept or an idea better. None of that is disconnection. It's connection. You're engaging. So maybe what we need to do is talk more about how we can connect back to our world. Connect with our bodies, our minds, our souls. You know, I don't want to get all preachy, but so much of the world sucks right now. And a lot of it is that we are so disconnected. And it's not because of COVID. It's not because of social distancing. I did a podcast about this earlier in the month where I talked about how, like, is it a podcast or a medium? I don't remember. But it was about, like, the toll of, like, isolation and social distancing. That's not going to hit people who are very well connected. That's not going to feel the same for people who are making a very deliberate choice to stay connected. It's going to hurt a lot of people who never did connect, who were only ever connected with people superficially. And again, that's not a judgment on them. It's a call to action. It's, let's recognize this and let's make a difference, because it's killing us. It's killing our world, right? Like, I mean, everything that's bad. Think of all the things that are bad going on right now. It could all be fixed if somebody just got a hug at the right time. Not to be all like cheesy and whatnot, but yeah, I think rather than feeding into this idea and this myth that if we all just got a break, we would be better. When in reality, I think that if we all stopped needing a break, stopped needing to disconnect, and figured out how to connect, we wouldn't feel the need to disconnect. So if I go back to my two big examples, I see Simply Illogical posting things often now, and she's connecting with people really great. I don't see anybody being like, oh my god, this person doesn't post as often as they used to, which you see with other like people online. You see a lot of like really negative feedback from people when they aren't consistent, and that's something that's always bothered me, and this is why I keep apologizing for it, because all the people who taught me about marketing are like, you have to be consistent, you have to be consistent, you have to be consistent. So I've always felt so much freaking guilt because I don't have the energy or the mental capacity of I would say a lot of people to be as consistent as others may want me to be. I also don't have the audience that is demanding that. So why am I freaking out over like trying to like post 3 times a day? Ugh. I can just get in my head about like how many little scheduled things I have. Why? If in reality I can just make this work based on what works for me, and I'm better able to address my world the way I need it to, and the way that others need me to, and I'm able to talk about things that I care about because I have the freedom to rather than the obligation to. I like that idea. I like the idea of having taken that. And then I see somebody like, for example, Sophia. I don't see anybody pissed off at her either. I see how everyone's like, oh, I'm so glad that you're back, but I'm also sad that you were struggling, and I feel bad that other people have added these stressors, and people are like, we understand and we're okay with it, like giving her good feedback, and because she chose to be vulnerable and honest about what she was struggling with, people are giving a very positive response because they care about her. Because in a moment where she could have come back and said anything else, she chose to connect. Even though she physically was very honest about the fact that she's not able to like constantly be posting online or constantly, giving into the demands of the world, she can choose to connect, and people want to connect with her. And I think, I don't know, I just thought they were really good examples, versus I've seen some other very negative examples, and other people who I think maybe talk more about connection and community and positive, like, it's one thing to talk about a certain subject, it's another thing to actually be somebody who's able to work it through it and actually do it and actually give a good positive representation of it. I've seen this year, I've been very disappointed with how many people were full of shit. I guess that's how I'll say it. And but it's been, I guess in my head, it's been good because I could just unfollow people who maybe I've had negative kind of thoughts towards in the past, where I was like, oh, I don't know, this person seems very shamey, or like what they're teaching seems very odd, or like maybe they don't believe it, or maybe they're just trying to like come off morally superior, etc. So then recognizing that right now, when the fucking world is burning, literally in Colorado, we have like 3 or 4 major fires going on, and when people just need a better way to handle the stress of this year, and to see some people really just miss the mark, it's disappointing, especially when they've been people who have been so adamant about criticizing how others shouldn't. So yeah, this has been a weird year for me, and I know I've been really disconnected, and it's been really hard to not be, to not, I guess, fit a mold or an idea of what I should be. And I think for a lot of people, I think that a lot of people feel that way. I'm seeing a lot of people post like apologies for not being online during a freaking pandemic. Like, I think that the people who care, and the people who don't care, and are going to have an issue with you. Take a break if you need to take a break. But use that time that you're taking a break to genuinely figure out how to reconnect, so that you don't have to completely disconnect all the time. And yeah, I think that's my little rant there. I hope you guys like it. I wrote a whole post on how to choose, or should I take a break? I think that's what I named it. And it's on my blog post and on my YouTube. So go to rocioflores.com with 2 I's, or go to bit.ly/Rose YouTube, all lowercase. And I have both of them. Actually, no, that one's written. It's not on YouTube. What am I thinking? Okay. It's just on my blog post, or you can look at it on my Instagram. So go over there and read it. I think I tried my best to kind of give you a new framework for how you can make this decision, because I do think like physical breaks are important. Like, go take a nap if you need to, but disconnecting in a way that's unhealthy is not good. So how do you decide which one you're doing, right? And then look out for my Medium post, which I'll be doing here soon, where I give you a scolding, basically. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to this. I'm really appreciative, and I don't know how to end these yet. So yeah. Peace out. Bye.